Absolutely, Aaron. The vice president remaining, we understand, at the presidential retreat at Camp David, as you noted, for security reasons. You touched on a very important point, the delicate balancing act, because certainly the administration saying it is not business as usual. It certainly is not and cannot be after what this nation witnessed on Tuesday. But at the same time, as you noted, the White House wanting to show that government is up and running, that things are being taken care of, that federal workers are returning to their jobs, that the U.S. government is doing everything and throwing all resources possible into search and recovery efforts. So there is that balancing act, trying to get the American people to somehow move forward and get back to business and get on with their lives. But, you know, certainly no one's saying it's business as usual. And that was an important part of today, the president declaring this the National Day of Prayer and Remembrance, the president calling on all Americans during their lunch hour to go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, to take some time and pray for the victims, for the families, for the thousands and thousands of people, really everyone, Aaron, as we've noted, affected by this, because as you know, Aaron, you really run into almost everybody that has been touched on based on this tragedy, either directly or indirectly. Almost everyone knows someone or a friend of a friend who is either in these trade centers or on a plane or in some way has a family friend affected. So that is part of what the president hoped to do today. Aaron?
Well, you're being pretty much drawn out by a plane going overhead. It can hardly be business as usual in the country when in the president's declaration of national emergency today, it cites, quote, the continuing and immediate threat of further attacks on the United States. We have another pool report. David Gregory is the pool reporter traveling with the president, and he is filing for all of us to hear, and so we'll listen into what he has to say with the president.
This is David Gregory traveling with President Bush now in Lower Manhattan, where the president is now meeting with local search and rescue teams. He's alongside Governor Pataki and Mayor Giuliani as they shake some hands, meet fire commissioners and rescue crews. We are standing about 100 yards to the north of what used to be the North Tower of the World Trade Center, and I am literally footsteps away from a huge pile of rubble that was Building 7, which is now smoking and completely destroyed. This housed the Secret Service, and the president is just now getting his first look at what remains of the North and South Tower. The poignant moments are all around. The president raising his thumb to a group of firefighters in the distance who are still working to clear the debris from the North Tower. The president going along and shaking hands. I can see him mouth the words, "I appreciate you," as he goes down the line. Those men he's waving to, again, as I say, about 100 yards away. The smoke is very thick here, though the skies have cleared, and there is still the rumble of fighter jets overhead that also accompany the president, some 3 of them, as he was touring the damage from the air. The president, Governor Pataki, and Mayor Giuliani, as well as a 37-member congressional delegation touring the damage from the air for about 10 minutes. The president will remain here as he listens to members of the New York Fire Department describe to him Building 7, where, again, the Secret Service office was housed. Mayor Giuliani pointing to some of the other damaged buildings in the area where windows are missing and are clearly structurally unsound. As the motorcade was moving through each of the cars with American flags on top, there were people lining the sidewalks, waving at the president, faces completely still and what is obvious, so completely sad and silent as the president's motorcade moved by. The president will stay at this location, get an assessment, we're told, of all the efforts underway right now. He will then move on to another location to assess the damage, and then we'll move on to meet some families and other rescue personnel one by one as he continues to take in the site, which is to those who have said that it is impossible to capture on television, it's certainly true, as the smoke is so thick down here, to see what are essentially phantoms, what used to be the World Trade Center. This is where the president is standing and looking up now and trying to take it all in. more as we continue. This is David Gregory reporting with the President.
David Gregory is the pool reporter today. The pool rotates day to day. David, down there, and I gather, Kelly, you may be able to help me on this, but my guess is it's a very small, there are several different sized pools, I think, aren't there? And that's a very small one today.
Very small one. Standard practice, though, is always to have one television correspondent and television crew with the President at all times, and that, of course, today it is David Gregory of NBC. I believe there will be certainly someone representing newspapers, the wire services, magazines, and radio. They're keeping it very, very tight, of course, for security reasons. You heard David, Aaron, mention the President sort of giving a thumbs up to firefighters, saying, appreciate you. Clearly an opportunity for the President to really try to boost the spirits of these firefighters, these search and rescue teams who have been working around the clock and trying to go through that rubble. And as we've heard, family member after family member hoping and hoping that they will find some more survivors in that debris. The President, I think David said, got an aerial tour of the damage for about 10 minutes and then is on the ground and will get an assessment of all the search and rescue efforts and then meet with some families and rescue personnel. Aaron, you're really seeing the President try to do two things, as we've noted. We saw him go to the Pentagon to see some damage and meet with rescue workers. We definitely saw him do the prayer service today. He went to a hospital in the Washington, D.C. area yesterday to meet with victims. This is the part of the side of the President, his role here to try to comfort a grieving nation. At the same time, as you noted, putting forward orders to call up to 50,000 reservists to help with security and recovery efforts. Also, the administration preparing the nation for what it calls a long struggle, saying there would not be just potentially one military response, basically saying that this will be a long, possibly multi-year campaign to find those responsible and to stamp out terrorism around the world. So the administration definitely also trying to prepare the nation for what will be a very long battle against terrorism. Aaron?
Somewhere in that mass of people ahead of that girder, we suspect the President is, and we also suspect as time passes, we'll get some better pictures of the President down there, but we're probably not going to get him for a bit. The President was reluctant to go to the site until he was assured that it would not be too disruptive to the relief efforts and the rescue efforts, and we note it clearly has not disrupted the effort to cut that beam down, because you can see the torch, they continue to work and clear that area, that piece away, even as the President makes his way around the site. David Gregory in his pool report noted something that we had mentioned earlier, and that it is until you see it on the ground, in the air, in person, I guess, that you get a sense of the real magnitude of this. Martin Savage has seen much of it over the last couple of days. Marty?
Well, I can empathize very well with the reporter that was giving us that pool report, and even the President of the United States. I've spent a lot of time around Ground Zero. Your first impressions, where every sense in your body feels, sees, smells, even tastes the disaster that took place there, is something that the television will never give to you. And it has an impact on you. It changes you, and it would be very interesting to hear the President's comments, having been there. There's so many times we have struggled, even as reporters, to try to give you words, to try to give you some verbal depiction to go along with the pictures, and you can't. And I think when the President's there, he sees that as well. And meantime, we watch these fighter jets continue to provide cover overhead as the President walks below.
One of the things about this, Marty, it seems to us, is that in terms of describing what is left down there, the awful mess down there, the pictures, whatever the limitations of television, and certainly there are some, but whatever those limitations, the pictures themselves still speak volumes. The smoke still rising now on Friday, late Friday afternoon, speaks volumes. Judy?
Yeah, Aaron, I'm watching the same pictures you are and wondering, maybe you or Marty can help me understand where the people are walking to tour. what is the relationship between that and where the rubble is, and where the human remains are? I'm trying to understand, how is it possible to get close enough to look at it without being physically on top of it?
Well, Marty, weigh in here too.
Well, first of all, let me tell you that I'm at a disadvantage that I cannot see on a television monitor exactly what you are seeing. But one of the things to point out, the areas where they have always felt that the greatest chance for survival would be people that are now underground. No matter how they got there, whether it was in the form of the collapse or whether they had been underground at the time or near ground level and then collapsed into the ground. That's where they believe the chance of survivors are. The sub-basements of the World Trade Center are said to go down at least 6 levels, not 6 stories, deeper than that, 6 levels. Some of these ceilings are 20 feet high. So it is quite possible that there is an area that is being cleared out and prepared, because that's where they feel most likely the chances are of finding. But I can't tell you specifically where the president is walking. He would not be walking in an area, though, where they have an active search for a survivor going on.
But Judy, as a practical matter, the damage is so broad and so widespread that wherever, assuming the president is within even a couple of blocks, and surely he is, it's a terrible scene down there, and it is not unlikely there are victims of the collapse still there. Just picking up on something that Marty just said, there's a tunnel that the PATH trains are the commuter trains that run between New Jersey and what was the trade center. That was the end point, or the beginning point, I guess, depending which way you're going. And crews from the other side, from the New Jersey side, with the Jersey City Fire Department, continue to work through the tunnel. They are hopeful, as Marty indicated, that's a natural air pocket, and that perhaps if they work quickly enough, and it's flooded now, but if they can work quickly enough, pumping out, clearing away, working their way through it, there is a possibility, just a possibility, but a possibility they may find someone alive, Judy.
Aaron, we've also learned, we've been talking about the many roles that a president fills at a time like this. He's keeping an eye, of course, on the investigation. He's looking to the military front, to what our options are as a nation. He's touring, he's been comforting families of those who are missing and presumed dead. We also have been told today that he has proclaimed that flags throughout the country will remain at half-staff through not just tomorrow, which I think had been the original plan, but through Saturday, September the 22nd, which extends this period of national observance, if not mourning, at least for one more week. And I will also tell you, I see that CNN correspondent Jean Meserve has reported in talking to Walmart and other stores that sell flags, that the sales of American flags have shot way up. Walmart reporting it sold 314,000 American flags just on Tuesday and Wednesday this week. In the previous 2 days, it had only sold 15,000. Kmart sold 200,000 flags. So the point we're making is that there is a burst of patriotism in this country.
Yeah, it's pretty clear when we've been, and we haven't had obviously much time to be out and about, but when we've been out, we have certainly seen in New York signs of that. We saw an American flag in a restaurant the other night. Some firefighters came in and they were applauded and serenaded with the national anthem, or God Bless America. It is one of those moments too. The president is down touring in the area. This is tape of the president as he circled the area around the Trade Center. He's approaching the area of the Trade Center. This would be the pool footage that we're just now getting in, and this took place not all that long ago, like perhaps a half hour ago. We lose track of time a little bit these days. Coming into Manhattan, well, that looks to me like the southern tip of the island. So we're just kind of wheeling around, and I would guess there we go. As we zoom in, you see where it all once was. It's really, to my memory at least, the first time that I have seen the south tip of the island, of Manhattan Island, looking back at where the Trade Center was. All our focus has been from the other side, from the north looking down. Shot of the president's helicopter landing at a heliport along the Hudson. And that's a scene live that we have all become too familiar with over the last few days, Judy.
Well, Aaron, we're going to, of course, keep our cameras trained on that area of South Manhattan where President Bush and other dignitaries are getting their first look at the rescue recovery efforts there. But today in Washington at the Justice Department, they were giving out more information on the suspected hijackers. Attorney General John Ashcroft released the names of 19 men suspected of hijacking the 4 airliners that went down on Tuesday. Now, all 19 of those are presumed dead, of course. Law enforcement officials tell CNN all of the men can be linked to suspected terrorist leader Osama bin Laden. FBI Director Robert Mueller described the efforts his bureau has taken to investigate the attacks on Tuesday.
As of today, we have 4,000 FBI special agents who are working on the case in various offices around the country and on various aspects of the investigation, and we have 3,000 support employees also on the investigation. 20 FBI legal offices are running down leads overseas, and all 56 FBI offices around the country are engaged in the investigation.
It's FBI Director Robert Mueller. And now for the latest developments in the investigations underway, let's go to Mike Betcher at CNN Center in Atlanta. Mike.
Well, Judy, they're looking at those 19 names. As you said, they believe that they do have contact somehow with Osama bin Laden. What they're trying to find out is what groups did these people actually belong to? And I have information gleaned from intelligence sources about some of the groups they're looking at and some of the individuals. Let's begin with Islamic Jihad of Egypt, sometimes called Al-Jihad. It is led by a man named Ayman Zawahiri, and this is a picture of Zawahiri on the left with bin Laden. That was taken about a year ago. He is a top lieutenant of bin Laden. We have a fact sheet on this man. He goes either by Abu Fatma or Dr. Abdel Muiz. He's Egypt's most wanted man, widely regarded as military commander and chief strategist of the militant Islamic Jihad, or Al-Jihad. And he is the personal physician and close associate to Osama bin Laden. Now, we also have a second group and person that's being looked at by U.S. intelligence agencies, and frankly, this name puts chills down the spines of counter-terrorists who work in this country. He is being looked at but has not been connected that I know of or have been told, but I am told that he's looked at as one of the people that could have a connection. His name is Imad Mughniyeh. Imad Mughniyeh is well known in terrorism circles. This is not Imad Mughniyeh, actually. This is, we'll take that off. In fact, only one picture in the last 21 years exists of Imad Mughniyeh. He was one of the original founding members of Lebanese Hezbollah, and up until this event that happened in New York and Washington, terrorism experts say he killed more Americans and prosecutors in this country than any other terrorist in the world. He is responsible, they say, for the U.S. embassy bombing in Beirut, the Marine barracks bombing, hostage-taking, bombings in Argentina, bombings in Saudi Arabia, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, a link between bin Laden and Imad Mughniyeh came to light back in 1994 when intelligence sources were able to discover that at an Islamic conference in the Sudan, bin Laden and Mughniyeh came together to talk at this conference in the night, and that they believe some of the seeds could have been planted back then in 1994 for what is happening now. Not the specific plan, but a general strategy. That's at least a theory they're working on or looking at right now. Now, more evidence of the bin Laden-Mugniya connection came from this man you saw earlier, Ali Muhammad, who was a U.S. Special Forces sergeant. Ali Muhammad was recruited by the Al-Qaeda organization, and he testified at the trial of terrorists who were convicted of conducting the Africa embassy bombings. Let's look at that testimony. I'll read it to you. He says, "I was aware of certain contacts between Al-Qaeda and Al-Jihad organization on one side and Iran and Hezbollah on the other side. I arranged security for a meeting in the Sudan between Mugniya, Hezbollah's chief, and bin Laden. Hezbollah provided explosives training for Al-Qaeda and Al-Jihad. Iran supplied Egyptian Jihad with weapons. Iran also used Hezbollah to supply explosives that were disguised to look like rocks." Now, this came in public testimony, and it relates to terrorist activities up to the African embassy bombings, but that is a public link by a former member of Al-Qaeda between Mugniya and Osama bin Laden. So that's something very important to keep an eye on if that pans out as a lead. I will tell you that I spent some time in Beirut this summer, talked to leaders of Hezbollah, because Hezbollah's name was brought up in that testimony. Hezbollah denies they have any intentions ever to attack the United States with any terrorism. They're very emphatic about that, and I want to make that point clear. That's what they say. But these various links are being looked at in the intelligence community, and there are a lot of links to look at, Judy.
All right, Mike Boettcher in Atlanta watching all these investigative threads, and I would just, one question that immediately comes to my mind, but I'm not going to ask you this now, Mike, is how, if they're coming up with all this information now, after the fact, why weren't we knowing about it earlier? But we're going to be talking to someone in a moment who can perhaps help us answer that question. At the Pentagon, they're not only keeping an eye on the investigative aspects of this, they're of course also looking at what are the next steps militarily. And for both of those angles, let's turn to CNN's military affairs correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. Jamie?
Well, Judy, the Pentagon announced today, as we reported last night, that the Pentagon has requested and President Bush has authorized a call-up of thousands of reservists to back up some of the people who are flying combat air patrols over the United States and also providing disaster relief. Each service, the order is approved for 50,000 reservists to be called to active duty. Each of the services have reviewed what it is that they've been asked to do and identified requirements so far for about 35,000 reservists. The breakdown is about as follows. The Army is planning to call up about 10,000 people. The Air Force, 13,000. Many of those will be air crews and pilots for these planes that are flying, either flying over the United States, providing homeland defense, or on strip alert, waiting to be sent on a moment's notice to take to the air. The Marines will be calling up 75,000 people, the Navy 3,000, the Coast Guard 2,000. They're going to be providing everything from port operations to medical support to engineering support, support of civil authorities, even things like chaplains and military police will be called up. And initially what they're doing is they're asking asking for volunteers. You might ask, well, who are these reservists? And basically they're your co-workers, they're your neighbors. They're my cameraman today, is in the military reserve. And the head of reserve affairs for the Pentagon said today that they're getting an enormous response from reservists who say they are volunteering for duty.
We've had people who are knocking on the doors seeking to help. They want to serve. They want to be a part of this. They're very emotional. We've had to say, wait a little bit. You know, we've only had a matter of hours since this all began. We're proceeding along our way, and now we have the authorization to bring those people on board.
Now, the way the U.S. military is structured today, it can't launch any major military operation without the help of reservists. That's part of the plan. But this mobilization is really geared more toward, as I said, homeland defense, making sure the United States is protected from any future threats, and support of civil authorities who are engaged in disaster relief. If the United States moves ahead with military action against suspected terrorists, that will probably necessitate another call-up of reserves. Judy?
All right, Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. And Jamie, as you've been talking, we've been looking on the right side of our screen at the president's motorcade in Lower Manhattan. These are live pictures of President Bush. We've been reporting to you about his activities there as his helicopter landed at the southern tip of Manhattan, and he has been taking a close look at the recovery and rescue efforts underway there in the vicinity of the World Trade Center. But we're just beginning to get a sense of the enormity. In fact, none of us, you've been talking about this all day long, Aaron in New York and my colleagues, just beginning to get a sense of the enormity of the devastation there in New York City. While we're looking at this, we want to have joining us someone who has been very involved at the Pentagon. Formerly, she was the Deputy Chief of Army Intelligence. She is retired Army General Claudia Kennedy. And General Kennedy, I'm going to pose to you the question that I halfway posed to our correspondent Mike Boettcher a minute ago. If we're getting so much information so quickly now about these suspected terrorists, why didn't we have it before?
Judy, I think that part of the answer lies in the way we've been looking at the terrorist problem. Is it a criminal issue or is it a military threat? And when you handle it as a criminal issue, then what we do is we take a look at it through the FBI, we gather evidence, we try to build an airtight case for court. But when you look at it as a military threat, you look at it for early warning of impending attack, and you try to destroy it before it comes at you.
You're saying the threshold is lower. Is that it?
Well, the threshold is lower for action if you handle it as a military threat. But what I'm saying here is that some time ago, I think we went in one direction, and that is to look at it as a criminal issue. We wanted to make sure we could bring these people to justice through the court system. And I think what's happened is the world has changed, and our approach probably at this point needs to be reviewed and say, do we still want to try to handle this primarily as a matter of law enforcement, or is it now really a military threat that the military needs to deal with?
Well, just as an example, in the last few days, we've learned that that the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden, the United States has been looking at that for a number of years. There have been several instances in recent years where people had identified, authorities had identified his whereabouts, but nothing was done. There was a report yesterday in the Associated Press that at the end of the Clinton administration, they had a lot of information, but they chose not to take military action. What would it take to change that approach, I guess is my question.
Well, my thought is, like a lot of Americans today, that what happened on the 11th of September has altered our viewpoint about what terrorism is, how devastating it can be, and it is probably the beginning of some thoughtful discussion about what it is we need to do in response to terrorism. I would say that we have got some superb people in the national security policy area and in operations, and we need to go ahead and take a hard look at this. And I am sure that the President and his team of advisors is taking a very hard look at this even now.
And you believe we're up to the job?
I absolutely know we are.
All right, retired Army General Claudia Kennedy, formerly Deputy Chief of Army Intelligence. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Judy.
I appreciate it. And now back to Aaron in New York as we see these pictures of the recovery effort.
It's a New York Fire Department tent in the foreground there, and somewhere in the background we suspect the President is, and we're certain we'll get better pictures of this when the pool is allowed to get its pictures out. It's a very small pool with the President. Quickly, we mentioned a minute ago that there was some effort to work through the PATH tunnel, the commuter train tunnel from New Jersey to the World Trade Center, in hopes that there were people still alive in the tunnel. Officials now say that is off. There is nothing to salvage. Correspondent Jeff Flock has been working the Midwest the last couple of days. He was in Wisconsin yesterday. He's in Dubuque, Iowa today, taking the pulse of the country from that vantage point, and he joins us now. Jeff.
Indeed, Aaron, our cross-country tour continues. This is it's a window and door factory, Eagle Windows and Doors. Perhaps you've heard of them. This is one of the places, one of the countless places around the U.S. today that have been marking this day with moments of silence and other observances. And Darren, you were saying you don't want the president's job right now as we were watching him tour.
I couldn't imagine the feelings and emotions that the president has right now. I am so much with him in spirit and in faith. I really hope the best for him.
You folks are a long way away here in Iowa, but you feel very much attached and connected to what's been going on. How is that?
I don't think there's anybody around the country that doesn't somehow know somebody who knows somebody or have a direct relative who was in the area at the time to be affected by it.
We're talking about the reserve call-up. I know you have reservists that work here with you. That's coming. Do you have fear about what's coming down the road now, the next step that this nation takes?
I think there's fear, but there's also just a sense of something's going to be done this time. You know, it's not going to just be washed away. We're going to have to take care of it this time.
This is tape of the president meeting some New York firefighters, New York police officers, some of the workers. This is tape we got back just a minute ago. Jeff will allow your conversations to go on while our viewers also watch the president as he works his way through this group of rescue workers. Look at that face, how tired that young man looks.
His tour today. Do you feel good about how the president has reacted to this so far?
I think he's reacted very positive, and I think that the whole U.S. is behind him, along with underlying nations and larger nations overseas. I think they're all supporting his actions.
As we watch the president in New York talking to the people that are firsthand having contact with this, a rescue effort, what is his next step in your view? What should his next step be?
Just keep visible, keep assuring us that things are going to be okay. He's doing everything that is possible. Just be himself. Right now, he hasn't gone, like in a bunker and hidden. He's been out there, right there, and he wants to be with us.
How do you rate him so far?
I think he's doing a very good job. I really liked his speech the other night to the country, as well as just the support of the prayer vigils and that sort of thing, being support of that, and coming down to New York, which I haven't seen yet. But
we're watching it now on the air.
Right, but being visible to the people.
You said it's a tough job. Nobody wants it in a time like this. Is he the right man for this job?
Oh, I think so, very much so. He's, I think, done as good a job as he could do over the past 8 months, considering what he's had to deal with. And I think that he'll come through shining just the way every president of the United States does.
The nation coming together. Aaron, the latest from Dubuque and our cross-country tour will continue, and we'll continue watching.
Jeff, thanks. Thank you very much. We continue to look at tape of the president. We see, and this is tape, we see New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani just off the president's shoulder there. This is tape that the pool shot just a few moments ago. It gets a little difficult here identifying rubble, to be honest, but I do believe that's an area that we have been able to see as he moves, giving a thumbs up to some of the rescue workers. Again, that's Governor Pataki, the New York governor, off to the president's on the left side of your screen. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and obviously an official with New York's bravest, New York City Fire Department. Certainly no one would quarrel with that this week, would they? That they are New York's bravest. Some 200 firefighters still missing in the rubble. This is, again, tape shot by a very small pool of reporters that have been allowed to travel with the president today. Some of that has to do with security. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the president was very insistent that his visit be at worst minimally disruptive. Any presidential visit anywhere is disruptive. Richard Roth is down on the ground. Richard, come on in.
Yes, Aaron, work is going on right very near the president. You can see torches, sparks as what's left of the pedestrian bridge to the American Express corporate building is being brought down. They've been working on it for the last few days. It's one of the structures that's still been left up. One can't help noting that at this time in Wall Street, for the thousands of people in the World Trade Towers, this would be a very joyous part of the week. The stock market would have just been closed. It was Friday afternoon, and usually Wall Street in this area, World Trade Center, has been often called a ghost town on weekends, though more people have been moving down here of late, and as we've noted over and over, it is now a different type of ghost town. You have these giant buildings hulking over the president and his entourage in lower Manhattan, and they're just dark, no power. Some are structurally weakened, their fate unknown. And Friday afternoon in New York, not the way it used to be.
No, it's certainly not. Just helping identify some of the other people there, we see New York Senator Charles Schumer facing the camera, basically. And off to the left there was Joe Albaugh, the FEMA director, a longtime friend of President Bush's, and he named him to run the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Again, this is tape shot by the pool. Is Elizabeth Cohen available here or not?
Yeah. Okay.
Elizabeth, have you seen any activity? Is the president going to make his way to the Armory?
Unfortunately, Aaron, I have no idea.
Okay. Okay. Elizabeth has been, we see Senator Clinton, Senator Hillary Clinton, getting a kiss on the cheek from Mayor Giuliani there. They were almost ran against one another. Kelly Wallace, will the president make his way to the Armory?
Well, Aaron, we don't know, again, because the White House keeping everything under wraps a little bit, but we do know that he is expected to go to another location after this one. So we don't know what that location will be, but we do expect him to go somewhere else after spending some time with firefighters and police officers. And I just wanted to bring up something I learned earlier this afternoon that I don't think has been reported just yet. You see the president there alongside Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. I was speaking to former President Bill Clinton's spokeswoman earlier today. Of course, we know that the former president, along with Senator Clinton, attending the National Prayer Service in Washington, D.C. And to show you how this really hits home, apparently, according to the spokeswoman, Chelsea Clinton was 12 blocks away at the time of Tuesday's attack, and that she apparently has a friend who was working in one of the towers, one of the Trade Center buildings, and that she and her friend joined countless other New Yorkers racing away from the downtown area shortly after 9 o'clock in the morning. And apparently, according to the former president's spokeswoman, you know, the President Clinton, hearing about this, obviously concerned, but he was a father first and foremost. He was concerned about getting in touch with daughter Chelsea. He couldn't get in touch with her for a while, and he was most gratified when he was finally able to talk with her. And then, of course, we know that the former president was in Australia, made his way back to New York, and that he and Chelsea decided, as New Yorkers, according to the spokeswoman, they wanted to go down to the area and talk to New Yorkers and try and do everything they could to comfort those people grieving. I thought that was rather extraordinary. Again, it shows you how this really hits home.
That's remarkable. It's remarkable that it happened, and it's frankly, I think, somewhat remarkable that we hadn't heard it until this point, given how much is out there. Charlie Rangel, congressman from Harlem with the president, and then just in front of Mr. Rangel, Jerry Nadler, also a congressman from the Upper West Side of, I believe that's right, the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It's, as you would expect, it's all very cordial. These are not political moments. New York City is a very democratic town. And voted heavily Democratic in the election, as did the state. But this is not a political moment, and the entire delegation is certainly welcomed with the president today.
And Aaron, a very Democratic town and a Democratic state, but with a Republican mayor and a Republican governor.
Yes, indeed. It is a Republican mayor, and think back all those what seems like a lifetime ago in many ways to Tuesday. Tuesday was election day. Mayor Giuliani is ending his term. Term limits make it impossible for him to run again, and so it was election day to begin the process of choosing his successor. That election was canceled, and I saw this morning it's now been rescheduled, and I can't pull out the date from my brain here, but I know it's in a couple of weeks, I think, to see who will replace him. A couple of Republicans in the race, but at this point, I think it would seem more likely, without predicting any outcome or suggesting I'm doing that, that Mayor Giuliani will give up office to a Democrat. The mayor, as I said earlier, has generally been given, I think, very, very high marks for his handling of this crisis. He has been, as he often is, very visible out there when things go bad or things go well in the city. It doesn't get much worse than this, and he has been tireless out there. We expect in another few seconds or so to get another one of the pool reports from David Gregory. David is the pool correspondent who is traveling with the president today, and he will be telling all of the other reporters and us what he has seen.
This is David Gregory with the president in Lower Manhattan, who continues to survey the damage at what they're calling Ground Zero. We are within sight of where the Twin Towers stood. The president has been working a rope line surrounded by throngs of policemen, search and rescue crews, firemen, many of them getting on the bulldozers that they had been using to clear the debris, to take a picture, to wave at the president. We understand now that the president is actually going to stand on some of the rubble, grab a bullhorn, and make a statement. Some of these men have been chanting USA, USA, and don't let them get away with any of this. The cheering you're hearing is the president now with a bullhorn in his hand as he is standing aboard some rubble, his arm around a fireman with soot on his face. You can hear the chant. Listen to this. The president about to speak now. Listen in.
I want you all to know you can't go any louder. I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people that lied from us here, for the workers who work here, for the families who work, that make the stand with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon. The nation sends its love and compassion to everybody who is here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
You can hear the chants that continue as the president climbs down off the rubble, grabbing a small American flag and waving it in the air. This crowd here clearly loving it. It's an amazing scene, and as the pictures ultimately get fed back, everyone will be able to see what we are seeing now, a completely electric crowd of people determined to overcome this as the president and the throng of workers are surrounded by complete destruction. At one point, as you heard, some of the workers who were about maybe 50 yards away from the president said, "We can't hear you. the president beckoned back, "I can hear you," and he said, quote, "The people who knocked down these buildings are going to hear all of us." That's the latest with the president as he tours the destruction in Lower Manhattan. I'm David Gregory.
Well, that is about as memorable a scene. I don't make predictions out here, but I'll make this one. I think you probably just saw what's going to be the front page picture in your morning paper tomorrow. The president with a bullhorn or an American flag in his hand, or both, talking to that group of rescue workers. I can't wait to see now the pictures, the lower level pictures. Again, this is tape of the pool of the president at the scene with members of the congressional delegation and New York City officials as well. These are familiar faces now to many of you, and should be, given how much focus has been on the city, this small area, really, a relatively small area of New York City, but how important it is to the city, how symbolic it is about the country. Wall Street, which will open again on Monday at 9:30 after being closed since Tuesday morning, the longest such closure ever. We expect the president to, well, before I do that, if Kelly Wallace up on the roof is still able to hear me. Kelly, I hope you were able to see that in your monitor. I know what that monitor is like up there. Have you ever seen anything like that before?
I have never seen anything like it. As I watched and listened with you, I was just thinking, what an extraordinary moment. There, the president, as you noted, holding a bullhorn, and the chanting, "USA, USA, don't let him get away with it." You know, Aaron, we've been reporting that many people hope the president coming here would be sort of a morale booster for these firefighters and these search and rescue teams. Clearly, it appears that that is exactly what happened. It probably, though, Aaron, was a bit of a morale booster for this president, who is obviously facing the most difficult challenge of his only 9-month-old presidency, and that is, of course, balancing an absolute tragedy, trying to comfort the nation, as well as focusing on the investigation and trying to make the difficult decisions about next steps, military options, working with the international community, in his words, to whip out terrorism. So this likely to be a very memorable experience for the president. And Aaron, as we've all been reporting, one of really the most incredible stories here, and certainly one of the toughest is the stories of all those firefighters and police officers who were going into those buildings as all the people working in those buildings were coming down. I know I was on Tuesday not too far from the buildings talking to people who got out, and many people saying that they remember coming down the stairs and firefighters, many very young firefighters going up, and people would cheer. And of course, many people very, very upset because many of those same firefighters are now some of them missing. And the president even talking about that in his speech earlier at the prayer service. Aaron, you heard that when he said, talking about all the names that we're learning, and he said they are the names of rescuers, the ones whom death found running up the stairs and into the fires to help others. And obviously many of those firefighters and rescue workers out there certainly concerned about their colleagues and comrades. So obviously a very important moment for those firefighters and rescue workers. Obviously an important moment for the president too. Aaron?
Yeah. I was thinking about the president's morale as you were. Presidents, as you and Judy both know, you've covered them, live in a kind of bubble, and it must have been good for him. Judy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I read I think it was a New York Times this morning, someone who saw those firefighters going up the stairs at the Trade Center as he was coming down, and thinking later it was a ladder to heaven. That phrase has stuck in my mind. And just, again, thinking about the people, the president getting a boost, in a way, if you will, from meeting with these people. I don't think we can underestimate how important it is to those people on the ground working so hard to see the President of the United States coming in their midst, if only for a few minutes or an hour or half an hour, whatever it is, to shake their hands, to congratulate them, just to do a thumbs up. It must be just an extraordinary provide an extraordinary lift for them to have him there.
Well, meeting a president under any circumstance is not routine. And meeting the president or seeing the president in this circumstance must be something else. It must be something. And goodness knows, these men and women down there have been working long and difficult, and today very uncomfortable days. And any morale boost they can get, much appreciated. Richard Roth has been down there as this group moves through. Richard?
Yes, Aaron. Normally I'm at the United Nations. I guess I'm struck by the fact that here we are again in a year ending in 2001 and a Bush in the White House, and the talk, the rhetoric, the language from the National Prayer Service in Washington, and some of the rallying around the flag that we and you saw just now. Certainly very similar to the Persian Gulf War and his father's conflict, when President Bush says this conflict was begun on the times and terms of others and will end, in a way, at an hour of our choosing. He's certainly setting the table for some form of military action to come, and certainly the firefighters and the rescue workers who are feverishly clawing through the rubble will back him to the hilt. There's been 10,000 tons of rubble already removed, a lot more still left there, some of which the president was standing on.
The president.
Aaron,
go ahead, Judy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, listening to Richard, I'm reminded I was talking earlier today at the Cathedral Prayer Service with Franklin Graham, the son of Billy Graham, and he was saying he thinks the American people are ready for what comes next. We were talking about how in the last 50 years, nothing has really brought the nation together and made people prepared to make what will be some sort of sacrifice in the days, weeks, and months to come. But this is different.
Well, yeah, I mean, say what you will about what went on around the Gulf War, and it was important and it mattered. It was, I think, for many people in the country, they felt it was something the country had to do to engage the Iraqis. There was an economic threat and somewhat of a political threat, I suppose. But this has been a smack in the side of the head of the country, and that's wholly different, it seems to me, in the way people are reacting to it. This is, I mean, I was on the street yesterday. I thought people, I've taken this personally. This is like personal business now. That's a very different feeling to me, as I see it, from the one when the president's father was trying to marshal forces against Iraq.
I think we feel violated as a nation. You know, people talk about feeling violated if they've been mugged or if their house has been broken into or something on a small scale. Of course, it's important to you if it happens to you, but I think our country feels and has been violated, and everyone does take it personally.
And when you hear the reporting of Jeff Flock in Dubuque and in Wisconsin yesterday, other correspondents in other parts of the country, you become aware that it's not just those of us here in New York or in Washington who have this sense of being violated. This is something, this wasn't an attack on New York and Washington. This is an attack on the United States, on institutions of the United States. And I think people have, in fact, taken it quite personally. If you continue to look at the bulldozers working the area, the president, it is not, I'll confess here, not clear to me whether he has moved on. We expect him to go to one more location, perhaps to meet with some of those. He has now met with some of the rescue workers, perhaps to meet with some of those sad and desperate people who are seeking their loved ones. We have at various times visited the Armory in New York, which has been set up to deal with the friends and family of the missing. Just a bit ago, the president holding the bullhorn in the center of the picture and addressing the rescue workers, firemen from all over the area, not just New York City, but from all over the area. At one point, they said, "We can't hear you," and he said, "I can hear you." And they were chanting, "USA, USA." There are hundreds, of course, hundreds of workers down there, And in that area, obviously everything came to a stop for a while. It's just a remarkable, even as grainy, this was shot, I suspect, from quite a distance, as grainy as that is, and we'll get a much clearer picture, and you will see still pictures very soon of this too. As grainy as it is still quite remarkable. It's something
Aaron,
to see. Yeah.
I was watching this, and you know, we're talking about how much this means to the rescue crews and the people involved in this recovery. I had a couple of phone calls Wednesday night from people in New York saying, where is the president? We know, you know, a lot of us didn't vote for him, but we need his presence here. And it's almost as if the White House was listening, because it was Wednesday, or Thursday rather, yesterday, that the White House announced the president would go.
Sorry, I mean to interrupt. I think there's your morning picture right there. The president waving an small American flag in the center of that group of people. What a shot that will be.
Yeah. This is grainy, we should explain, because the light is poor in there. I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, it is almost 5 o'clock here on a very dreary day in New York. As we were saying, it is possible the president will meet with some of the people whose loved ones are missing. Elizabeth Cohen has been at the Armory talking to those people for the last couple of days. It is a difficult and sad place, Elizabeth.
It is a dreary day in New York. It is an especially dreary day here on the corner of 26th and Lexington, where families come in. They are ushered into the Armory to give details about their missing loved ones. They're asked everything: their hair color, their eye colors, 7 pages worth of details, and then they are shown 2 lists. One is a list of people who are still in the hospital, and one is a list of people who have been found deceased. But people here on the street corner, despite the dreariness, still have hope. We're going to talk to one of those people right now. Ricky Fortini is looking for his friend Bruce Gary, who is a fireman and was one of the first on the scene called to the World Trade Center. Who saw him last?
One of the members at the firehouse has seen him last, and that was pretty much the end of it. He's still missing. He has 3 children at home that are anxiously waiting for his return, and the hope doesn't stop.
What do you hope will happen when you walk around, you show this picture? I'm sure you're hanging up posters.
Well, hopefully he might be in a medical center. He could be in various different areas that, you know, maybe another member saw, another department member has seen. There's just so many things that can happen.
Tell me about him. We can look at the picture. We can see what he looks like on the outside. Tell me about him on the inside.
He's a great loving dad, has 3 fantastic kids. He's a single father, and he did whatever he could for his kids.
Now, you, sir, when you heard about the explosions, you were telling me your first instinct. What was your first instinct?
Our friend and myself, our first instinct was to get to ground zero, which we did about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. We were really the only, I guess, civilians you could say that were there on site, assisting the fire department, any type of staff that was there, whatever we could do.
Were you able to do anything to dig through rubble at all?
Sure. We were moving debris. We were helping the firemen carry hoses, and a various amount of tasks.
Now, you still, if you turn, you can see that you still have dust here. You were back there today.
That's a lot of the insulation that was laying all over the ground still and being blown up by the wind. Although the rain has succumbed that was most of the dust that was there.
Thank you. Thank you. Aaron, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of stories like this. People who not only are looking for their loved ones, but are trying to help out everyone in this situation at the same time. It would be impossible for me to describe every little story that I've heard of people helping. For example, yesterday there was a vice president of a technology firm who came down here, set up a scanner at the restaurant that I'm standing in front of, and people just came in and he scanned their photos so that they could put them on websites. A girl, she must have been 12 years old, was walking around and offering people people peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that she had made, offering journalists, offering people who were looking for family members. Another woman, she went to a hardware store and said, they need masks, not the hospital kind, but the real gas mask kind downtown. Can you give me some? They just gave them to her for free, and she ran them down there. There are so many stories like this during this dreary day here in New York. Aaron?
Elizabeth, I think I said to you yesterday at some point that in watching your work down there, listening to the people, one realizes that tragedy is a great equalizer, that in that mix of people there are the families of investment bankers and window washers. You talked to one yesterday, maintenance people, firemen and women. Tragedy knows no distinction in that way. It just affects people. And I think it's one of the things that makes it all so difficult right now. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm sorry.